And here's the thing, there is no perfect song. Just like there is not just one person in the world for you. There are tons of people out there that could make it work with you at certain points of your life. There are a lot of different songs that could work for specific projects. The only time there is only one specific song is if the project is based around your song. So yes, there are scenes in movies where they're talking about a specific song, so it has to be that song. There are commercials where they give like a wink wink to like a music video. It has to be that specific song or else it doesn't work. Like there's no joke, because if you can't get that song, it doesn't work with any other songs.
Bienvenidos a 8000 kilómetros podcast, el episodio número 11. Y antes de empezar quiero hacer una mención y quiero aclarar algo, porque estaba escuchando el otro día el episodio 10 que salió y me percaté de que se grabó un intro y me di cuenta que Max estaba diciendo que nos había sacado del podcast, que no servíamos para nada. Y carnal, nunca vas a sacarnos a Eric ni a mí, te aseguramos.
A defensa de Max, Luis estaba ahí mientras grabábamos ese intro, así que no
van a caer.
Habemos personas que estamos trabajando un poquito más y tenemos un poquito de menos tiempo para hacerlo. Y Max, carnal, o sea, vas a caer.
Vas a caer, basura.
Dije que no servían para esto nomás, weón.
Bueno, ahora siguiendo con el episodio, en este capítulo tuvimos a Marjorie Scheker de invitada, que primero que todo le queremos agradecer por su disposición y por su conocimiento que compartió con nosotros en este capítulo. Fue fenomenal. Marjorie es una Synch Licensing Manager en Warner Chappell y lo que ella hace es negocia en pos a sus escritores, a sus compositores, para que en los negocios de Synch ellos siempre tengan el mejor negocio posible y puedan sacarle el mejor provecho a sus canciones en todo lo que son películas, ads o series de televisión. Entonces, muchachos, les quería preguntar ¿qué es lo que más les quedó en este capítulo?
A mí me encantó como lo que tú dices, Jorge. Ya tiene demasiada experiencia negociando diferentes tratos, en diferentes contextos, y el hecho de que nos haya dicho que cada negociación es diferente y única porque tienes demasiados aspectos que considerar, se me hizo uno de los inputs mucho más relevantes y grandes que ella nos pudo haber dado y compartido con nosotros en el episodio.
Bueno, hablando con Marjorie, pudimos ver que hay muchas oportunidades y mucho contenido que está saliendo hoy en día en la industria, y entonces los artistas deben estar preparados para que lleguen el momento de que tengan una oferta, ya sea de sync, un record label, o hay cosas que uno siente que son tan simples que uno no se da cuenta, como por ejemplo grabar tu canción de forma instrumental para que tenga otro uso, tal vez comercial o una película, y también poder adaptarlo en casos de que si es que una campaña de marketing o una empresa te quiere comprar tu canción, lo haga cuando te lo pida. Entonces, entender esa parte de lo que es el Synch Licensing fue mi highlight del día.
De acuerdo. Y además, hablando de nuevas oportunidades, también las nuevas tecnologías abren puertas. Lo hizo ya YouTube, lo hizo ya Facebook, y en ese momento lo está haciendo Twitch. Entonces siempre ha habido problemas al momento de repartir las regalías que estas plataformas de contenido generan. Entonces en este momento hay mucho todavía que aprender para que aquellos que tienen los derechos de autor y aquellas personas que son los escritores puedan reclamar el dinero que les corresponde. Y Marjorie nos da un poquito de luz en esto.
Y finalmente, o bueno, al principio del capítulo, pero hablamos de valores que tiene que tener el songwriting y la producción para que una canción sea más synceable, por así llamarle, que es un revenue stream muy importante para productores y songwriters hoy en día. Entonces, nada, tocamos varios temas, pero en resumen hablamos mucho de que el sonido tiene que ser único. Muchas veces estamos escuchando que mucha música suena igual, así que nada, diferenciarse en eso. No cambiar tampoco la forma de componer, porque se nota cuando uno está componiendo algo demasiado cliché quizás para una ISO o algo así. Tampoco es algo que pega o suene natural. Que una canción tenga un earworm, que le llama ella, que es que esa canción tenga un leitmotiv o algo que se queda contigo a lo largo y después, etcétera, que lo reconoces. Y nada, como siempre, una buena producción, bien agradecida, y el profesionalismo en el sonido, etcétera. Así que eso y mucho más en el capítulo mismo. Así que nada, eso, agradecerle nuevamente a Marjorie por haber estado con nosotros. Y ojalá que disfruten el capítulo tanto como lo hicimos nosotros.
Hello, Marjorie. How are you?
I'm really good. Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming out virtually.
It's a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Well, Marjorie, I think just for starters, we would like to know which were your first steps in this crazy industry that we literally all love, and alongside which were some tips that you picked up along the way that helped you develop your career.
So I've always liked music, like always. And while I didn't study it in college, I decided that I wanted to get into the industry somehow. So I did a master's in music business management at the Columbia College of Chicago. And through different like internships and things like that, I just really focused on making contacts and trying to figure out what area of the business I wanted to get into. Ultimately, I didn't go into anything that I did those internships. So I guess they kind of told me all the things I didn't want to get into. And then I started looking for jobs, and I was just really desperate at that point to get a job in the industry, like regardless of what it was. I interviewed in New York. I sent resumes like to Miami, and then my brother was living in Los Angeles. So I went out there for a couple of weeks and I took a bunch of interviews. And the very last one that I had was at Warner Chappell in LA and the licensing department. And I did not have any idea what that meant. Like I didn't know what licensing was. I had the interview and I tried to be as professional as possible. And I realized how little I had learned about the music industry during my 2 years master's program. And I don't know if I asked any of the right questions, but obviously I did because they called me back and they gave me the job. So it was a lot of learning things, a lot of things like I didn't want to do in the business, and then getting thrown into something that I had no idea of what it was. So that's kind of how it started. It was interesting because I feel like the students that I talk to now have a much better handle on how the business works. I'm surprised they took the chance on me, but they did. So I'm very lucky about that.
And since then, what do you think, like, what have been like those big significant learnings that you would have hoped you would have known?
Well, I mean, first of all, I wish that I had known what the difference between a master and a copyright was, because that is like very fundamental, especially when you're dealing with licensing, but more specifically when you're dealing with music publishing. I mean, I have no idea what music publishing was. I wish I had known that right off the bat. I wish that I had realized that not everything is just like A&R, because I think I had it in my head that either you were an artist, you worked in A&R, or you worked in like the accounting department. I really had no idea on how there were so many different departments and facets and different areas within the music business. And yes, I wish I had learned more of that during school, whatever, but I think the onus was on me to actually find out more about it. I knew more about who the companies were, but I had no idea what they did. So I wish that I had known that before, and I wish I had taken the time to learn that stuff. And also, I wish that I had learned who the key players were, before I jumped into things.
100%. And one of the things that most of the positions that get most of the attention are the ones that are the sexiest one, that you just mentioned, like A&Rs. And like simple stuff, like many people don't know what's the difference between like the master and actual song. And in the Spanish, actually, it's very different, because you will never think it's the fonograma y la composición. It's like fonograma. We never use that word, fonograma. We never use that.
It is difficult. And it's funny though, because we never, I think our licenses say fonograma, but I don't think we ever say fonograma. We always say masters, even when we're writing in Spanish. So we do say like derechos de la grabación, o los derechos fonográficos, but we don't really ever say the actual fonograma. Most people just think of a song as a song, and they don't realize that there are just many different parts that go into a song.
100%. And now that we are talking about songs, I know that you have a lot of contact with some writers. And if an artist wants to start looking, or a songwriter, emerging songwriter, wants to start looking for opportunities in music sync, what would be like the right way to do it? Or what would be the right timing to do it?
Well, I mean, it used to be a lot. There used to be a lot more gatekeepers as far as sync was concerned. Productions would only ever listen to music from certain people. But now that's changed dramatically with social media and the platforms that they have given to artists and songwriters. So the people who are making the decisions on what music is going to go, into projects are listening to everything now. And they're reaching out to independent writers and artists in a lot of different ways. Maybe it's on their YouTube, if it's on their TikTok, if it's on their Instagram. So it's different. I think that for most writers and artists, it's good if they have some sort of like sound, like something that's kind of unique to them. That's really helpful because there is a lot of music out there, especially mainstream music, that sounds very similar. And so to compete against all of that mainstream music that is all kind of the same, it's hard to stand out when you're independent. So not to say that that's bad. It's just, it's harder to get your foot in the water. It's a lot easier if your sound stands out. Also, I would tell them to get a couple of really honest friends to listen, because you don't only want the people listening to your music before you put it out there to be the yes people. You want some actual criticism. Also, if you want to be offering it up somewhere or sending it out to sing people, pick the best like 3 songs that you have that you think, we say in the industry, we say sync friendly. So that means, depending, if it's for advertising, is it generally a beat? Does it have good lyrics, like some usually positive lyrics? Is it catchy? Is it recognized? Like, is it easy to remember in like 30 seconds? Because that's how much you have in most advertising, is 30 seconds. TV and film is, especially now with the explosion of streaming platforms, is a whole different animal. So while you used to never be able to license music that was really depressing or really dark, now people love that stuff. They love quirky music now where they didn't like it before. So there's a place for that music now where there wasn't a place for that before. It was all very mainstream music. So it also depends on the territory that they're in, because a lot of times the territory dictates the musical preferences. I mean, what I license here in Spain is not what my colleagues license in the US. Yes, there is some overlap because there's that top tier music that everybody in the world wants. And that doesn't change by territories in general. But the smaller stuff, my colleagues in the US and in the UK, for example, they are licensing brand new music all the time. And in my territory, it is more, give me the tried and true, everybody's grandma knows this music. So depending on the territory that you're in, that might be the music that an independent artist is up against. So like I said, it depends. It depends a lot on the project, depends a lot on the territory. But more than anything, I would tell writers and artists to be critical of themselves. Get the friends and the family members who don't lie and don't say, it just sounds great. Have them listen and have them give you their critiques to find out like which are the best 3 of your songs that you want to put out there, and ask them why. Ask them, what are the lyrics that stuck out to you? Do you feel something when the drop, when the drop kicked in? Like, did you like the weird keyboard part? Like, it needs to be something that makes you stand out from the crowd, because there's so much music out there. There's so much. And there's so many talented people that now have a platform that didn't have a platform before. You go on social media and every other account is some amazing singer or some amazing guitar player or some amazing producer who they might not be signed, but they're doing it out of their house, and it's incredible. And that's daunting. It's daunting. So you have to try to stand out somehow. Also, it doesn't always hurt to start small. Of course, you would like to book like a Coca-Cola campaign, because that would pay your rent probably for a long time, depending on things. But start small and reach out to local film schools, local production companies, and offer your music and say, hey, like, this is what I have. Local businesses that you are not opposed to what they sell or what they do. You can say, hey, I have this music. It would be great because I'm local. Sometimes people do want to do things on a local level. It doesn't always have to be national and international for it to be good. So there's a lot of things. And also, don't give up hope. because you never know when that one thing is going to come. And also protect your music. Make sure that it is registered. If you're a songwriter, make sure it's registered with a PRO. Make sure that if you have co-written with somebody, make sure in writing you have written out what the splits are with all the songs, and you have all signed it and you're in agreement with it. So there's no copyright, like there's no split disputes later. Make sure if you're the record, if you made the sound recording, that you have it somewhere that is your property, that you made it. If you're going to be sampling music, make sure that you cleared those samples, because what you don't want is to get sued by another artist whose work you incorporated into your work. Take the extra steps. Make sure you have the right metadata and the tags or whatever in your music. Make sure it's all there. You can't just be like, oh, I made this song. Take the step. I'm going to upload it right now. Yeah, you can. But have you made sure that everybody knows that it is yours and that it's ticked off all the boxes and all the information is correct? Like, that's also really important. You have so many songwriters. I mean, you don't have to sign with a PRO. You don't have to. There are a lot of songwriters that are foregoing that now. They don't want to. They can then give their music to like performance royalty-free projects. Fine. But make sure it's protected somehow by a contract, by sending an email to your mom saying, this is what I wrote on the 5th of June, and attach the audio file. So if ever you need to go to court, you're like, oh, look, this is the email that I sent to my mother on it. You know what I mean? Like, so you just that's the other thing. Make sure that they protect themselves, because there are a lot of, unfortunately, sketchy people out there who will try to claim your art as their own. And you can see that in all the amounts of like duplicate social media accounts out there that are trying to monetize on the back of somebody who's blowing up. You get all these fake burner accounts that are trying to pretend that they're somebody that they're not. So you don't want that to happen with your music.
Yeah, that's true. And I wanted to ask you, now that you said so many things about being aware of, and when you are doing a sync deal, what are the main things you have to be aware of to maximize the deal in the publishing income for you as a songwriter?
Okay. So first of all, you have to be very clear on the terms, the conditions of the use. So if you are being approached to have your song put into some sort of project, you need to know exactly how it's going to be used. You need to know the name of the project. Is it a commercial? Is it a film? Is it a TV show? Is it a podcast? What is it? So what is the project? Who's making it? So you need to find out who is producing this thing and where, because sometimes that makes a big difference as far as taxes go for when you get paid. Like, that's very important. If you're getting your music used in a project in the US and you are not based in the US, there are different tax repercussions for making money in the US. So you need to look into these things before you sign a license. So that's one thing. How much of your music are they going to be using? The duration of the use. Are they going to be using 30 seconds? Are they using 5 seconds? Are they using the whole song? You need to know this. You need to know how are they using your music? So is it background use? Are they going to use it in main end credits? Is someone going to be singing your song? Are they going to be using the original master recording? Another thing that you need to know how it's going to be used. You need to know what media is it going to be launched on. So is it going to be on television? Is it only going to be on the internet? Where on the internet? Like, that's also important. Is it going to be only on social media? Are there going to be paid ads? Like, these things you need to ask as well. What territory is it going to be available in? Nowadays, for TV and film in general, and a lot of times like online video, the territory is world. They don't want to have to deal on a territory by territory basis a lot of times. So world will usually be the default. But if that's the case, you need to make sure that you're getting compensated adequately for that it's going to be able to be shown worldwide. Oh, and the term, meaning how long. So is it going to be available for a month? Is it going to be available for 6 months? Is it going to be a year? Is it forever? If it's a commercial, do not do it. It's called in perpetuity when it's forever. Don't sign away for in perpetuity. That means that they can use your music in their commercial forever. You should be compensated for that. You shouldn't give it away anyway. In perpetuity is generally reserved for TV and film and those kind of things. But for a commercial, do not give your song away for in perpetuity. That's just bad business. Also, you need to know a description of the use. So how your song is used, like if it's a background use, if it's going to be main and credits, that's the how. But then you also need the description. So especially what are the visuals going to be? Because maybe you are morally opposed to gambling or alcohol or obscene violence. You need to know if your song is going to be used with something that you yourself are completely against. So you need to ask the description, script pages if it's kind of a scripted project, or sometimes you can ask for the clips. A good description of how the use is you should always ask for that. That's like a default. And then if they can tell you what their budget is, that's great. But if not, you have to kind of just guess. Sometimes you Google things and you're like, oh, okay, so say it's a brand that's coming to you. Go ahead and Google that brand. See what other songs they've used in their advertising before. If you notice that the last time that they did a campaign, they used David Guetta, they have money. So don't just accept the first offer that they're giving you. But if you see that it's a brand that the only thing that they're using is indie artists, local artists, they probably don't have huge, deep pockets. So you need to be cognizant of that. Obviously, if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to be able to charge as much as David Guetta, but you don't want to give it away for free. We hardly ever give it away for free. Even if it's a small project, we always charge something for our efforts and something for our songwriter, something for our efforts that we're going to the process of getting it approved, doing a license. And you should too, as a songwriter, because you went through the effort of creating this piece of art. You should be compensated for it. So just because, a lot of projects are like, oh, it's a really good opportunity. Yes, it is a very good opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity, but I'd like to be compensated for it. There's a terrible history of content creators asking for music for free, but they're getting paid. So why shouldn't you get paid? That's something that you should be aware of. Something you should be aware of. Always try to get something, even if it's something small, because even foundations and small nonprofits, they have some sort of budget. They obviously had to have some sort of budget to create this video that they want to put your music in. They're paying somebody. They should pay you too. So don't let them guilt you into giving away your music for free. And a lot of projects will try. So your music is worth something. If not, they wouldn't have contacted you. So don't just roll over. Just say, okay, I want something, even if it's something small.
Yeah, I agree. And you want to be well compensated. Now that you just mentioned the perpetuity word in your contract, what came to mind was because I recently saw a video of how they came up with the McDonald's jingle, and involved was Pusha T, Pharrell Williams, and Justin Timberlake, and they just received an upfront fee and no publishing at all. And it's been the longest campaign that McDonald's has run over time. So you want to be very well compensated. Going a little bit back on now songwriters that you just mentioned, that you also mentioned that there are songs or songwriters that have music that are very syncable, and they actually live of making just songs and albums, and they manage to be super syncable. So what do you see in the songwriting and the production of these artists, these songwriters? What does an aspiring songwriter can learn from these people?
So like I said before, it needs to be something that it becomes like for a lot of times, for it to be sync friendly, it's like an earworm kind of song. You hear it once and there's something about the song that stays with you after. It could be the hook, it could be the lyrics, it could be that bass line. There is something in there that makes you go, huh, okay, like it stays with you. Like it doesn't always have to be the lyrics, it doesn't have to necessarily be the vocals. There is something about the song that stays with you. I mean, if you think of like the Jaws theme by John Williams, it's like 3 notes, it's 2 notes. It's like, but it's so recognizable and it stays with you. You could hum it right after you hear it. So a lot of these songs that we consider sync friendly are something that like, oh, okay, that hook is just it really sticks with you. But sometimes it's the lyrics. Like there's just like a feel of the lyrics, especially for the more emotional songs, like they make you feel something, like they get like the words kind of get caught in your throat. They give you like the goosebumps, but a lot of it has to come with like good production value. Make sure that your songs are polished. Demos are good for what they are. Like they are good when you are trying to find a singer to sing your song, because maybe you're a songwriter/producer and you're not the artist and you're trying to find someone. You make a demo, you shop it around, and somebody's like, yeah, no, we want to jump on this. That works for that. But if you're going to be sending your music to content creators, it needs to be polished. It needs to be done. It needs to, it needs to sparkle, because it needs to sound as professional as it can. That doesn't mean it has to have been done professionally. It just needs to sound professional. It needs to be clean. All of it needs to be crisp. Don't let it be muddled. There are vocalists, there are mumblers, and that's okay, and it works for them. Just make sure that your whole song doesn't sound like that unless that is how you sing. Like, you don't want the rest of it to be muddled and mumbly. I'm trying to think of, you just kind of know when you hear these songs, like you just kind of know. You're like, okay, like it makes you tap your foot. It makes your chest swell because maybe it's really emotional. And you're like, oh my God, this song's so beautiful. Some songs are really simple. Some songs are so, so simple, but they work so well. Simplicity is not a bad thing, especially when you're people who are making some sort of audiovisual project. Sometimes the most simple things work because they don't clash with what's going on the screen. Because sometimes there's something to be said for chaos, where the visuals are in your face and fast moving and the music is doing the same thing, and it's just a cacophony of like visuals and vocals at the same time. That works. That's not always what you want. Sometimes you want people to be crying in their house, looking at their laptop, watching like a TV show, and the song is like, sounds like she sang it in her closet, but it's really, really emotional, and it goes with the emotional part of the scene, and that works too. So it's really hard to say. We just kind of know. We start listening to these songs, like sync people, and we have listening sessions, and I actually just had one this week with my colleagues from the European offices, because we had a sync camp for some of our songwriters who wrote specifically for sync in mind. And some of the songs really sounded, first of all, they sounded really forced, like they were specifically written for sync. They hit all the buzzwords, but like too many buzzwords, like we want to be together, I want to be free, I love you so much. Like it was like they took a brief of like, this is all the words we want, and they put them all in the song, and it just felt forced. And then there were some other songs that had an effortless to them, and they conveyed the feeling of what was being presented, but it sounded like something that was like an actual song that would be put out there to be played at a concert. Like it's a different thing. So, I mean, obviously you want to make music that's true to you, but while you're writing it, if you want to sneak in one that leans a little bit more to something that you could hear in a TV show or a film, like that's not bad either. Without being forced. Like you can tell when people are being fake. You can tell when musicians are being fake.
Yeah, you want to be authentic, yeah.
You want to be authentic. That's exactly right. You want to be authentic. But there are writers out there and then artists out there that they're being authentic, and they authentically just write jams. Everything that they write is just a bop. So, I mean, that's authentically them. It's just, they have learned the formula.
They're blessed, yeah.
They're blessed.
Marjorie, I wanted to do a quick follow-up on what you said. Do you think lyrics play like a huge important role in music in order to be syncable, or you could perfectly have instrumentals?
It depends. Well, okay, so that's one thing. Always have your instrumentals available. Always. So if you're going to go ahead and lay down a track, make sure you mix it and master it with the vocals, and then do the same thing without the vocals, and have the instrumental available, easily accessible. I say that because, for example, in advertising, sometimes what they want is a little bit of the lyrics, and then they have so much voiceover that they want the song playing underneath, but they don't want the vocals to clash with the voiceover in the commercial. So they want the song, they still want the song, but they just want the music underneath. So if you're able to offer that to brands, for example, that's really helpful. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what territory you're in if the lyrics are important. Why? Because a lot of countries license English language music, but their first language is not English. So it's not that important what the lyrics is. The lyrics could be complete nonsense and not go at all with what the scene is, but it doesn't really matter because the audience is not listening to the lyrics. They're listening to the vibe of it. They're listening to the feeling of the song, the tempo, the rhythm of the song, but the actual lyrics completely fly over their head because they're listening to the dialogue and or reading the dialogue on screen, like because nowadays lots of people watch and read at the same time. So that's not always so important. But yeah, I mean, it can be really important. What they're asking for is lyric specific. Like, especially with advertising, you get a lot of lyric specific requests. So it's a bank commercial. We want to talk about freedom. Why? Because this bank is saying that you don't have any restrictions. Okay, great. Cell phone companies, for example, they want freedom. They want youth songs. They want to know that they are cool and hip. So they want to be singing about we're young, we're cool and whatever. You get a lot of brands that want to talk about love, but nice love, not dirty love, because it needs to appeal to the moms and the dads and the kids and the everybody. So sometimes it's friendly love or friendship. It really just is so project specific on whether or not the lyrics are important. Sometimes it really is just the feel of the song.
Yeah. So I was going to say that it's really interesting to see how there are so many factors that can make a song a hit, and it depends on each project. And of course we have like amazing songwriters that actually only like work to make all these hits, and they're basically machines and they're like, they compose one music, they release it, boom, hit. Next week, they are composing the next one and working with this other artist, boom, hit. And so, like, talking a little bit about this, because you mentioned already some sync songwriting camps. That's when, for example, like, you gather all these, great, amazing minds that make hits by themselves. But, like, once you gather them in a songwriting camp, what would you say are the most, important factors to consider so that actually at the end, you do have those great hits at the end of the songwriting camp?
Well, obviously, when we do those kind of camps, we make sure that the minds and the voices and the talent that are being put together, that they all tick a different box. Because if you go into one of those writing sessions and they're all producers, and none of them are like top liners, none of them are lyricists, then they're all doing the same job. So it's hard to get a finished product when they only know one thing, they've come in with the beat, they've come in with the bass line, whatever, but they don't do any of the other stuff. So you don't want to put 4 producers together. I mean, in general, when we're doing that, we like to have one of each so that they complement each other. You want to have complementary people working together so that they inspire each other. And what's interesting is that sometimes we do these camps and they all do different genres. And that's not a bad thing, because sometimes they play ideas off of each other and they work, and there's something about the mesh and the fusion of the 2 different styles or 3 different styles, and it totally works where you wouldn't think it would work. I mean, Old Town Road by Lil Nas X, that's a country hip hop song, and that song really, it's a huge song. It was a huge song. So, those you don't think about that. You don't think about hip hop and country music together, but it really works, you know? So sometimes that's not a bad thing to work with somebody that has nothing to do with the genre that you write in. Not that everybody has to be genre specific. There's so many artists, they don't stick to one thing. That's not a bad thing, but it's just make sure that the people that they're writing with are complementary. You know, that's the kind of thing that we try to do when we're doing those kind of sync writing camps, when they're writing together, when they're collaborating.
Awesome. Marjorie, I wanted to take you now to like your day-to-day routine or your day-to-day work. If you could explain to us and to the people that are hearing us, how does your daily day look like, or how do music supervisors approach you? Do they come with the scene, with the budget, if you could expand a little bit on that, please?
Yeah. So my day starts with a whole bunch of emails, obviously. So I've been working at Warner Chappell and Warner Music in Spain for 7 years now. And over the years, I've developed relationships with different clients around Spain that use music. So some of them are music supervisors. Some of them are the brands directly. Some of them are production companies. You have a lot of different, some of them are content creators directly, but some of them are the broadcasters. So you have a lot of different people that request music. Sometimes they come to me with, I have this scene, I want this song. I know it's your song, or can you tell me if it's your song? Or I know it's your song, negotiate it, tell me how much it's going to cost. So sometimes they come with a very clear view of what they want. Sometimes they come to me being like, okay, so I have this, for example, I have this commercial, here are the visuals, pitch me what you got. And this is the feel that we're looking for. What do you have? Because sometimes what'll happen is they'll do like a reference track when they're editing the spot, but they know they can't afford that reference track, because usually those reference tracks are like the top 5 recognizable songs in the world. They go with the tempo. And they go with everything because they go with everything. And they know they can't have it. So they will come to me and they'll be like, well, this is what the reference is. What do you got that sounds similar? Sometimes they're just completely open, that they don't know what they want. So they ask you to pitch them things. So that's sometimes a little bit more daunting because you're pulling from everything. Whereas when they have some sort of reference, you can focus on certain genre, if it's a female vocal as opposed to a male vocal. But if they're just like, send me whatever, you're like, oh, okay. And sometimes it's us reaching out to clients, new and old ones, saying, hey, what can we do for you? Here's what we have. What can we find within what you guys are going to be doing in the next 6 months, a year, that we can collaborate on? So there's maybe nothing concrete that they're working on, but they're having ideas of what to do. And so we try to get in there on the ground so that we can work on something together, or we create something together. So it's a mixture of all of those things. And then, unfortunately, the decision on whether or not they use my music is not up to me. A lot of times it's not even up to them. The people who are usually clearing the music are not the people that are making the decisions. Sometimes it's somebody who has nothing to do with the project. It could be the CEO of the company. It could be the director of the film, but you're not dealing with the director of the film. You're dealing with the music supervisor on the film. So a lot of times what you think is a perfect pitch, what you think is the perfect song, is not what somebody else thinks the perfect song is. And here's the thing, there is no perfect song. Just like there is not just one person in the world for you. There are tons of people out there that could make it work with you at certain points of your life. There are a lot of different songs that could work for specific projects. The only time there is only one specific song is if the project is based around your song. So yes, there are scenes in movies where they're talking about a specific song, so it has to be that song. There are commercials where they give like a wink wink to like a music video. It has to be that specific song or else it doesn't work. Like there's no joke, because if you can't get that song, it doesn't work with any other songs. So, and if you can't get that song, then sometimes you have to change the whole creative of a campaign, which happens a lot. So that's the only way when it's a perfect song. But the other things are all subjective. It's all who is the one making the decision. So that's the hard thing for us too, because while we think that our music is amazing and perfect for this specific project. There's a ton of other music companies out there that all think their music is perfect too, and they have sent the perfect pitch over to the client, and you're competing with them all the time. It's very rare that they only come to you knowing that there's so much music out there.
And now that you mentioned that you probably have those projects that they have a reference track, but they cannot afford that reference track. Now that they're like big franchises that they actually have the budget to work with the track they actually want, what are the challenges when it comes to working with those big movies?
The egos on both sides. The egos of the songwriters / artists that are getting contacted, and the egos of the production, the filmmakers, because they all have egos. Yeah. It's a lot. It's to manage both sides. I mean, obviously, you get a huge production. If it's a huge production, everyone wants to be in their production. If you're going to be, you as the production, think that anyone would be happy to have their music in this production. There are songwriters, artists that just do not want to do that kind of thing. So even though they're being contacted, they don't want it. And so the production is like, what? Are you serious? Really? What can we do? And they're just like, no, it's just no. Sometimes it's just no. That's something that filmmakers and brands don't always understand. Sometimes it's just no. They just don't want to do it because some artists don't like their music in publicity and like in commercials. Some of them don't like certain kind of films. They just don't want to do it. They don't care how much money you're throwing at them. But then on the flip side, sometimes the artist comes and like, okay, I'll do it, but I want this amount of money. And the production's like, I'm not going to pay you that much money. It's a ridiculous amount of money. I'm not going to pay you that much money. And they're like, why are they being so unreasonable? I mean, like, that's why we're here in the middle, because we're the ones negotiating these things. But sometimes it's hard because you're the go-between between these two people, and it's really tense and awkward sometimes. But yeah, it's egos on both sides when you're dealing with the really top-tier artists, the top-tier writers, because they know what they're worth. They know what they're worth. And these productions that have multi-million-dollar budgets can obviously afford it. It's a question of how deep are they willing to reach into their pocket. So it really just depends. But you don't get those deals every day. Those are not the deals that you're dealing with every day. And most territories, like mine, we don't get those kind of deals. We don't get those kind of deals because our music is not the standard, and it's not the first choice for filmmakers. Obviously, if there's like a specific scene because in a big but huge budget film they're going to Spain, well, yeah, that's like our choice, that's our chance. But they're not going to Spanish music for a Thor movie, for example. Like, that's probably not going to happen. We wish, but it just depends on the territory they're in. Although you are seeing now more and more bigger budget productions, not the like super ultra huge ones, but bigger budget productions that are willing to look at non-English language music. Also because that is the trend in certain parts of the world, non-English language music. Music in Spanish, Latin music, reggaeton, trap, and stuff like that, that is more likely to be considered for a bigger budget film coming out of the US, because you have a large population of Latinos there now. So they want to cater to that in some way. So maybe you could get maybe one use in like every so often big budget films, whereas you would never get that before.
That's really cool, Marjorie. And I like that you said that you were the middleman between the different clients and artists. So being involved in many negotiations along the years, there must be one or a couple of deals that you remember because they were amazing, they were challenging, they were hard or epic. Can you share with us a story of one of those deals?
Well, I'm currently working on a very large deal for a tourism campaign out of Spain. I just actually closed it. It hasn't been shot yet, but it was a lot of negotiation back and forth because the song, they're going to do a cover version, and they're going to do a translation into Spanish. For some of it, they're going to sing some of it in English, and then they're going to do some of it in Spanish. And it was a back and forth because the song that they chose is like a very well-known U.S. standard, which I can't say because the campaign hasn't come out yet. But it's a very well-known standard. And so the rights holders, like the estates, for the songwriters, because they're all deceased at this point. They know what their song is worth and how their song is used. So it was a lot of back and forth until we were able to get to a place where both the client and the estates were willing to come to an agreement. And it was kind of tense there, because I didn't want to lose out on this campaign. It's a almost worldwide campaign for 3 years. So it's a lot of money. So it's just a lot of back and forth. And what can we do? What can the client do in order to get the estates to say yes? And where can we get the estates to be a little bit easier going in order to not lose out on this really big deal for this song? So that was just in the last couple of months. So that was a really big one. And I had a really big campaign. It's hard for me to tell you the names of these things, because that's kind of confidential information.
It's okay.
But,
don't worry.
You don't have to say names.
Yeah, I did a campaign for a dairy company, a very well-known dairy company. And so they wanted to use a very well-known song in their spot. But when they sent over what the spot was going to look like, it was very apparent that they had chosen the music because there was some choreography going on in the spot. And the choreography was based on this film where this song was being played while somebody did a certain kind of dance. Well, when I went out for approval, my colleagues in the US were like, I think you're going to have your client talk to the film company for this film, even though there are other than the dance move, there's no other visual references, no wink to the film. There's really none of it. But because they're doing this specific dance move with this song, it infringes on their intellectual property rights.
And I think choreographies can be copyrighted, right?
They are copyrighted, yes. But depending on what the film is, for example, the Rocky theme, if there's a sync use that has a boxer that they're training or running or something, and they want to use the Rocky theme, they obviously have to go to, and the same thing with Eye of the Tiger from the film Rocky, they have to go to the film company as well, because there's some intellectual property gray area there. Well, so for that campaign, they ended up having to pay for the copyright, for the publishing, and for the intellectual property rights for the film company, or else they couldn't, and they had already shot the campaign. So they had to pay it. They had to pay money, and it was a lot of money. It was a lot more than that they were wanting to or had budgeted to spend. But they had already shot this thing, which was bad planning on their part. They should have gotten the yes before they went ahead and shot it. So then they would have been able to avoid the extra cost that they had to go through. So it was a lot of back and forth because the client didn't understand why they had to deal with the film company. And then also my songwriter was very, very specific with things and wanted to watch every single edit meaning you have a 60-second campaign that's going to go online, but they cut it down into different little shorter things for TV, for different spots that they want to shoot, or even online, they have little shorty spots. And he wanted to see all of them, and he gave notes. It was I didn't like how you cut my song in this edit, and I didn't like where you spliced them together with this minute. It was very specific. It was the most specific I had gotten from a songwriter before. He wanted to hear every single one. And then we had to send them back, and he had to be like, okay, I'm okay with this. So some songwriters are kind of I don't care. Some artists / songwriters are very specific on how their music is used. So that was a very long negotiation, but it was a very big campaign. I was very happy with that one.
Marjorie, I'm talking now about all these big negotiations, deals. I actually feel indeed the publishing industry as a whole has even come more to light the latest years. And now we are seeing people buying catalogs. We see investors seeing them as assets. I don't know. It feels it's something that's trending in the last year. So we wanted to know your opinion on what do you think an investor sees in a catalog aside from just a net present value? If you think there are other things, and what are the risks of those investments?
Well, so catalogs are interesting because, first of all, you can't control whether or not that there are certain catalogs that just because of the nature of their music, they're always valuable. They will be valuable until they finally go into the public domain because, catalogs have a finite term, depending on how many writers there are on the song due to the nature of copyright. But they will eventually go into the public domain, eventually. But that's a long time for you to have an asset that could be potentially making you money. That's a long time. And a lot of times, like I said, there are the catalogs like the Beatles and Queen and the Rolling Stones and things like that that have always been popular and will always be popular because there is always still somebody in the room that knows that music. Always. Because even if it's a 20-something ad exec that never listened to the Beatles, for example, for sure they have seen a commercial at some point of their life or some sort of TV or film use at some point in their life where they heard a song. So they just keep touching generations as the years go on. And so they just keep staying popular. Sometimes the popularity like ebbs and flows, but they're always still popular. But then there are those catalogs where you have no idea if it's going to be popular 5, 10, 15, 20, 70 years from now. Like you don't know that. You know, it's hard to know that. And so these companies take a risk. But what's interesting is that it only takes one use for these songs to come back into popularity again. Like you look at Don't Stop Believin' by Journey, and it's always been a popular song, But then it got used in the season finale of the show The Sopranos. And now that song is inherently more popular again. There are those certain uses that take songs out of, I don't want to say obscurity because they're not obscure, but they're not in the forefront of everybody's mind. And then you put them back into those people's minds and then you introduce them to a new audience all over again. And then the value of the catalog just goes up. But you're not the one making that decision on whether those songs are being used. So it's a very interesting metric of how they look at how the songs performed before, how is it performing currently on digital platforms, what is the awareness of the song with different target markets. Do they see that as being a song that people are going to be singing to their kids down the road? Like, is it something they enjoy that they're going to pass along? Like, it's a huge metric on how they figure out what catalogs to invest in. But you pay money once for it, and then you just get paid back for it. Like, you don't have to do anything to the song. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you might not even you pay the money once, but like it's not like something you have to keep investing money in a lot of times for it to make money for you. Sometimes it just exists and it makes money. And depending on the catalog, it's not up to you who's going to make covers of that song. But maybe somebody makes a fantastic cover of it and it blows up again. And you had banked on the original recording being like the end all be all, but then 20 years down the road, some person decides to make a really interesting cover of it and this song blows up again. And then your investment is like, oh, look at my return on investment. Like it's such an interesting, I mean, it's like art. I mean, it is art, but you know what I mean? It's like visual art. You sometimes never know when something's made. I mean, and you see these artists that they live their whole life in poverty and then their art is now worth millions of dollars decades after they're dead. Music's like that too. It's like that too. So you don't really know.
Look now, like, I don't know, Dreams, Fleetwood Mac. It went up to all these big playlists just because it went viral on TikTok.
And not just that song, but the whole album. That's the other interesting thing about it, is that one song can revitalize the whole catalog. Do you know what I mean? It's not just song specific. A song goes viral and then people are like, oh, that song's great. I wonder what the other songs sound like. And then they go and they start consuming all the rest. And you see all those songs, the ones that didn't go viral, start shooting up on the charts and getting extra amount of streams and being used more because one song went viral. So it's such an interesting thing to happen. It sometimes happens with books. You make one film, TV show based on a book, and then people are like, oh, I really like that TV show. And so they start reading all the books that have ever been written by this writer. they might not even be, they might be similar, but they might not be like, might not be a series. I'm more likely to do that. If I read one book that I like, I will go back and I will read more books by that same writer. And it's the same thing about music. People discover it and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, especially now that it's so easy to consume music. It's not like you have to buy anything. You'd have to buy the album and then go buy the other album. And now you just go on Spotify and you click on, this is Fleetwood Mac or whatever. And you find all the songs in their catalog because it's already been curated for you.
Yes, I think we agree that there are catalogs that are really special, and also that the value sometimes is kind of different because it's not always like monetary value. It's sometimes like, oh, I like this artist, like I'm a huge fan of this artist or this song or this album, like someone determines the value of each catalog, let's say, according to their like personality, according to their assets or what they are giving back to them as a person. And we were just wondering, in an hypothetical scenario, if you could buy a catalog for one superstar, which one would it be? And how would you approach that negotiation?
That's a very good question. Current superstar or?
Anytime. Like you can bring back people from dead. Yes.
Yeah, dead or alive.
I mean, obviously, like, who doesn't want the Beatles catalog? Because that's just a huge catalog that with ton of hits that are easily recognizable and easy to license and things like that. But that's a really good question. I mean, like I would buy Pharrell's catalog. He's got a hand in so many hits, so many hits, and they're amazing. I guess it's also very territory specific because it is because there are catalogs that you would buy in one territory that wouldn't make you the same kind of money in another. There's so many great catalogs out there. I mean, I would buy Dolly Parton's catalog.
Oof.
She's got a great catalog that lend themselves to covers, and lyrically they're just really good. It's just there's a lot. There's a lot of different songs out there and different catalogs out there that are worthy of investing in.
I guess it's a hard question for anyone to answer. Also, music has more and more uses, especially like TikTok, whatever, Instagram. We have each time more and more ways to use music and to sync music. So we wanted to touch specifically on Twitch because this streaming platform is gaining popularity over the last years and it's increasing popularity. And it obviously has had issues with publishers because they use a lot of music and like they have to cut down videos, they can use it, they can show it a couple of seconds. So where do you think that conflict is going to end, and what would you think would be an optimal but yet a viable solution for it?
So they don't have agreements with any of the majors right now. I think that's very telling. I don't think they seem to want to come to the table with anything realistic. I think they're going to get a lot of pushback eventually from their content creators that they will finally have to come to an agreement with the majors because they can't avoid them. Because yes, they could do what they're doing where they have licensable music by indies and smaller companies, which is great, but it's hard to only limit your content creators, and the content creators do not want to be limited to those songs. They want to be able to choose the music that they want to choose and use it. And I think they're just going to eventually have to work something out because the pushback from their content creators and their audiences, like their viewers, is going to be too much. They're eventually going to have to do something. The same way that all the big companies finally had to come to the table and be like, because the thing is that all of these companies, all of these platforms start with a really great idea. But they are using someone else's content. They're using someone else's intellectual property. And the companies that control that and the artists and the songwriters want to be compensated because the people that are creating things on their app or on their platform are getting compensated. And the company itself is getting compensated. So it's always why am I doing this for free? There's really no reason I should be doing this for free. While they believe that it's really good promotion, that's like promotion is all well and good, but I need to be getting compensated. But all of these companies started off with, let me just put my platform out into the world and then I'll ask for forgiveness instead of asking for permission. Yeah. I won't ask for permission first. I'll ask for forgiveness later. And if you look at all of these platforms, that's how all of them worked. They all just kind of like appeared. And then little by little, they started getting sued by large companies, large intellectual property owners, and not just music companies, film and TV companies that were like, hey, YouTube, why are you using my clips without my permission? Things like that. And then eventually it had to be regulated and they had to come to an agreement with everybody. But when they're new, they seem to be more like, oh, maybe it'll be fine, but it's not fine. Like they all have lawyers. They know. And that's the thing. And we know that they know. Their lawyers are obviously good enough that they know that they're infringing on someone's intellectual property rights. So they just eventually will have to
come around,
figure it out. They'll have to figure it out because, like I said, it's impossible to avoid the major companies.
Absolutely.
There are we deal with so many songwriters that have hands in so many songs, and that's the music that people want to use. Not to say that they don't want to use indie music, because they do, but there's always a bunch of songs there that are frequently used for that kind of content, and the majors represent their songwriters. So somebody's gonna have to make a deal.
Yeah, and they also the users are leaving the videos hanging on Twitch, so now they are on demand. So it was just a matter of time.
Yes. I mean, it's like the new technology, it's also the music companies. Like we sometimes are slower on the take. We need to be a little bit more in the forefront of these things, but you don't always know what's coming around the bend. Some companies are so secretive on what their project is, what their platform is, that they don't want to share that information beforehand. Some of them are very forthcoming, but not all of them are. When your platform has a large component that's based on someone else's property, some sort of deal has to be done. But regulating it is slow going. How music is licensed for live streams, how music is licensed for podcasts, how music is licensed for online video, like after the fact, like all of that's newer stuff that's been in the last 5 years. It keeps evolving because the media keeps evolving and the different kind of ways that we can consume keep evolving. It's not always easy because there's a lot of factors that have to be looked at when negotiating this.
I want to pull back a little bit into sync licensing again, because I'm curious to know, now that we are at the almost end, hopefully, of this pandemic, what are the trends that you are spotting when it comes to sync?
So, the brands are looking for more freedom. I'm free kind of things, because people are getting out of their house again, being out again, being together again. You're getting a lot of requests for being together again, because people can now start being together again, especially in the countries where the vaccine's going really well. The film industry was hit. The TV industry was hit hard, but the film industry was hit really, really hard during the pandemic, and it's slowly coming back as far as new productions are concerned. That's yet to be seen on what are the trends going to be, because I'm not really sure what kind of films are coming through the pipeline. TV has been had a lot of gritty TV in the past year, a lot of dark series. So you've been getting a lot of those. And I think that's going to continue because people seem to like that very dark, edgy series and the music that kind of goes along with that. But yeah, the commercials are more trying to, focus on positivity, but they're now more willing to talk about togetherness. And I think in different territories that they're, having more opportunities to license new releases. Like here in Spain, for example, it's still very top tier, recognizable song focused, because they want people to feel comfortable and like, oh yeah, I know that song.
So Marjorie, during the pandemic, now that we were talking about it, apps like TikTok, Twitch, or the Spanish fitness app like Peloton became quite popular. I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the main challenges and opportunities these new worlds brought to the business and to the songwriters?
These platforms have become a really amazing way to discover talent, especially when there weren't concerts to go to. So you get a lot of connection that way, where the concerts are coming back slowly but surely, depending on where you are. But, you've had a lot of people making music over the past year that have been doing it only virtually and have gained a following and an audience, a virtual audience. And so the record labels and the publishers have been looking at that, because obviously if they can do it virtually, the hope is that they can translate that into something live. we're working out how to deal with the explosion of online fitness that's being offered. Every territory is different on that, but we are getting a lot of those requests and figuring out how to handle them, because it's not like a TV show. It's not like a film. It's a fitness video. It's a very generally non-conflictive kind of use. And so it's not the same as like the one-off structure that we have for TV and film and commercials. So we're looking to see how we're going to handle those in the different territories. We're all kind of trying to deal with that, because it has been an explosion of those kind of licenses, because it's just a whole different kind of content. It's not the same as user-generated content, because these are established companies that are making the content. So we're all trying to figure out how to handle those that is easy for us as rights holders of the music, clients who are churning out video upon video every week, which is a huge difference between a TV or a film company who is working on a project every couple of months. It's completely different, especially because the production, the cost of the production is so much smaller, and they're like, the turnaround is so quick. So some of the bigger companies do direct deals with the publishers and the record labels. And you're seeing a lot of third-party companies sprout up to be like the intermediary. So they're doing the overall deal, and then they do little sub-licenses to these kind of like fitness companies. But it just depends on the company. It depends on the country. So, but it's a whole new world out there with so much talent out there that is so easily discovered. Not only are you able to grow a following, but I'm always amazed how much stuff the content creators can get. Like they have PO boxes and cash apps, and people just send them money and send them boxes of things. I'm just like, really? That is really interesting. It's a very different business model than before. So.
And I like other platforms. I feel like that, like these fitness apps, they are looking for the right holders. They are licensing the music.
Some of them. I mean, Peloton was sued in the U.S., but then eventually, they got compliant and with the major companies, and now they have deals in place. But there are some that have always been compliant and have at the very beginning said, yeah, we want music, we want good music, and we want to license it correctly, and they've been doing that since then. It's
pretty awesome how the music industry has been like evolving and adapting to all these like new apps or these new ways to develop content. And for us to start wrapping up, we wanted to ask you one more thing, for example, about like AI, artificial intelligence, because some people might say that for a song to be considered art, it needs to have like emotion, it needs to have like a meaning, a say or something. But like, how do you see these like new trends or new technologies like AI that are basically developing songs with algorithms? How do you think this would affect or innovate the publishing side of the industry?
So, first of all, there is the code or the programmer who programs the algorithm. Like, obviously, they would be one of the rights holders, because the music that results from their code wouldn't exist if it weren't for what they had programmed the AI to learn from. The next is obviously the examples that they plug into their algorithm. So maybe they put a whole bunch of Janet Jackson songs or whatever into the algorithm. Well, whoever wrote those Janet Jackson songs that are being put in there should get some sort of ownership of the work, the resulting work, because the music is based on their music, because the AI itself can't have any ownership. It's not a person. It's not anything. So it's interesting, but it doesn't make it less art just because it's made by artificial intelligence. I mean, there's a lot of music out there that nobody would consider art. It's just some sounds, but somebody composed it, somebody wrote it. I mean, art's very subjective. So there are a lot of songs out there that are objectively terrible, but they're still copyrightable and intellectual property, applicable. So, I mean, the same to be said for the artificial intelligence music. Just because it's not the work of actual people doesn't mean it's any less art. It's very interesting, though. It's very, very interesting on how that works.
Well, Marjorie, it's been a pleasure. It's been super, super insightful here. Thank you so much for coming out and like hanging with us for a bit. We do have one last question, and it's probably gonna be another like hard one. So, what's your favorite movie? And if you would have to add one song to that movie, which song would you pick?
Oof, that is really rough, you guys. Gosh, you guys are terrible. I mean, it's a really hard question. It's a really hard question. Here's the thing. If I think of the movie that I want to watch, like every time it's on television, or if I'm like, oh, I'm really bored, what do I want to watch? And I will bring out this movie randomly, and it's so weird about it. It's Sense and Sensibility with Keira Knightley. I don't know why, but I always really like that movie. Like, I'm always in the mood to watch it. And all of that is just score. There's no pre-existing music that is in that. There's no sync usage. It's just score in that movie. So I don't know if I could fit in I don't think there's anything that would seem timely or correct in that film. And I so randomly, I really love the movie The 40-Year-Old Virgin. But all of the music uses in that film are just really great. Like I feel like there are no other songs that need to go in there. I mean, this is really hard, you guys. I wish you had given me time to prepare, because it's really hard. That's really hard. Like I would probably need like a good week to have thought about those questions. Those are really, really hard questions. I'm sorry that I don't have an easier answer.
Awesome, Marjorie. Thank you a lot for coming, really.
It's been a pleasure, Marjorie.
No, thank you guys so much. I really appreciated being interviewed, so thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie.